what a weekend.
What a weekend. Wow.
Yeah, it was invigorating.
Yeah.
First of all, to see so many people there. And you've had the experience of being in the midst of a crowd like that in St. Peter's Square.
It's electric.
And all the way down the Via della Conciliazione, over the bridge, and in every piazza and street around that whole section of Rome. Unbelievable. And the energy was electric.
I wonder how many people actually went. Because you hear numbers, but I think it was huge, a huge number of people.
It was over 1 million, and we can
Isn't that amazing?
say that for sure, yeah.
Well, and I think that it was wonderful for so many people of my age who grew up with Pope Saint John Paul II, and of course Saint John the 23rd. It's in our day to know that we were here when saints were here. And I met a saint. And I believe you met a saint too. You met Saint John Paul II, and now he is a saint. It's a wonderful day for the church, a wonderful day to be Catholic.
Certainly is, and we were very fortunate to have KJ and Matt and RD Saul there watching the whole thing happen and reporting back to us from the ground, and some of the images that they sent back, some of the video is truly amazing and gives you the sense of what it must have been like to be there. So many bishops and cardinals from all around the world representing the universality of the church, present there to concelebrate with the Holy Father, dignitaries and heads of state, and of course there on the facade of St. Peter's, the images of our two new saints. And of course, not one pope, but two, in a sense, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI concelebrating as well.
And I could tell you from experience, this crowd we're seeing now, it is something they will never, ever forget. This moment, to be there, was joined by so many others who are there to celebrate and to thank and be part of the sainthood of John Paul II and John the 23rd.
One amazing report that I heard from someone who I know who was in Rome, couldn't get anywhere near the square, it was all the way down the street. At the moment of consecration, as the Pope Francis pronounced the words, "This is my body," and elevated the consecrated host, he said there was absolute silence.
That's beautiful.
And reverence, even with that enormous crowd. And of course, the relics of the two new saints were presented to the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and were kept there on exhibition throughout the course of the Mass.
And the crowd here are made up not only of Catholics, but also of people who were profoundly affected, and their lives were affected by the words of St. John the 23rd and St. John Paul II, and what they did during their reign as the Holy Father.
Yeah, they were certainly, both of them, in their own right, historic figures. For example, Karol Wojtyła, who took the name John Paul II, now a saint, really having a huge part to play in the downthrow of communism.
And I remember what was interesting was that when St. John Paul II was named the Pope, it was a big surprise, because it had usually, for many years, been Italians, and here was a Polish Pope kind of coming from nowhere. And now, if you go to present day, we have the first Pope from South America.
Sure. And Angelo Roncalli, who took the name John the 23rd, his canonization, of course, attracted a great, an enormous group of Italians, because he was so beloved by the Italians and the entire church. He is, of course, the Pope that convened the Second Vatican Council. Funny story, there were many funny stories. One of the cardinals said to him, "Your Holiness, there's no way we're going to be able to begin the Second Vatican Council in 1963. And so the Pope said, "Fine, then we'll start it in 1962. And he did.
And good for him. And that was a big surprise, because I don't think that many people expected him to do what he did. And I don't mean call Vatican II, which was just enormous, but I think they saw him more as a placeholder at that point. He was a little bit older, and yet he came in a ball of fire and said, "Listen, we are going to have this Vatican II. We are going to effect some change," and he did. So,
and a lot of people in Rome who are still alive and remember the moment will never forget when he said to a huge crowd gathered in St. Peter's Square one evening, "Go home and kiss your children good night in the name of the Holy Father." And they will never forget that warmth. And of course, we were able to bring all of this to you, not only on television, but through the great gift that we have in the church and in society in terms of communication, social media, and through images online and video on YouTube,
tweets,
and tweets, of course. We were able to bring the goings-on and the excitement of the canonizations last weekend.
And here you can see some of them, people who got together, people who might not have even have known each other, but were joined by this common bond, and young men who are called John Paul, that's a little John Paul right there. And then we have some priests who sent us some wonderful stuff.
Mm-hmm. I actually, one of my tweets, I have to tell you, I was able to capture the words of the actual pronouncement, the definition and declaration of the two saints. The moment happened like this, and I recorded it in this way. Francis took a breath, he paused, and said in Latin, "We declare and define John the 23rd and John Paul II our saints, and to be venerated as such by the whole Church."
Wow.